Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we are going to be looking at the nervous system.
Ooh, exciting.
I know, right? So we're using Dr. Rasha Eldeeb's physiology handout to guide us today.
That sounds like a good starting point.
Yeah, and get this, the central nervous system has over 100 billion neurons.
Really?
I know, isn't that wild? It's more stars that are visible in the Milky Way.
That's a crazy comparison.
I know, right? So by the end of this deep dive, you'll be able to drop some serious knowledge about how reflexes work, the blood-brain barrier, and just how complex those glial cells really are.
I'm ready to become a nervous system expert.
Me too. It's going to be awesome. Okay, so it's kind of like a symphony happening inside you, starting with how your body controls its own functions.
Right.
Dr. Eldeeb's handout talks about two main systems, the chemical and nervous systems.
Okay.
So the chemical system is like the long-distance runner, right?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It uses hormones to create gradual changes, but they're lasting changes. Think about like your energy levels or mood throughout the day. That's your chemical system working.
Oh, okay. So that's the marathon runner. The nervous system has to be more like a sprinter,
Exactly. It's all about those quick reactions, those split-second decisions.
like that instant you pull your hand away from a hot stove.
Exactly.
Yeah, I've tested that reflex a few times in the kitchen.
I think we all have.
Definitely. So how does this nervous system, actually work? It can't just be like a bunch of nerves all jumbled up, right?
No, you're right. There's definitely an organization to it.
Okay.
Think of it like a super highway of information.
Ooh, okay.
So it all starts with your senses taking in information, like the heat from that stovetop we were just talking about.
So that's like the on-ramp to the highway.
Yeah. That information travels along sensory neurons to your central nervous system, which processes that data super fast.
Okay, so that's where the brain and spinal cord come in,
Exactly. That's like mission control for your entire body.
and it's well protected.
Oh, absolutely. The central nervous system, the CNS, is tucked away behind bone, so your skull protects the brain, and the vertebral column shields your spinal cord.
Makes sense. Wouldn't want to leave those parts exposed.
Definitely not.
Okay, but the CNS can't be the whole story, right?
Yeah.
How does the nervous system reach every other part of your body?
Well, that's where the peripheral nervous system comes in, the PNS. It's like this vast network of nerves branching out from the CNS.
Like to our fingertips and toes and all that.
Everywhere. And we're talking like 12 pairs of cranial nerves and 31 pairs of spinal nerves.
That is a lot of connections.
A lot of connections.
Wow, it's kind of mind-blowing how it all works together.
It really is.
Let's talk about the neurons for a sec, like the real stars of the nervous system.
Yeah.
So Dr. Eldeeb mentions there are over 100 billion in the CNS alone.
It's a mind-boggling number. And each neuron is specialized to transmit information.
So some carry sensory information, others control movements.
Yeah. And others are processing your thoughts and emotions.
Wow. So it's like this diverse team of specialists all working together.
A well-oiled machine.
Exactly. Now, I've also heard about these glial cells, and I've heard that they're way more than just the glue they were once thought to be.
Right. That's definitely a common misconception.
So they're not just there to hold everything together.
No. Glial cells are like the unsung heroes of the nervous system. In fact, they outnumber neurons 10 to 1.
10 to 1. Okay,
Mhm.
so I definitely need to hear more about these unsung heroes. What exactly do they do?
Well, think of microglia as the cleanup crew for your brain. They gobble up debris and cellular waste.
Like little Pac-Man.
Exactly, keeping everything tidy. Then there's oligodendrocytes and Schwann cells, which produce myelin.
Myelin.
Yeah, you can think of it like the insulation around electrical wires.
Oh, okay.
It wraps around axons, speeding up signal transmission.
So myelin is like the express lane for those nerve impulses.
Exactly. And without it, signals would travel way slower, our responses would be sluggish.
So that's why myelin is so important.
Super important.
Okay. Are there any other types of glial cells?
We can't forget about astrocytes.
Those are important too.
They are. They're like the multitaskers of the glial world.
Okay, multitasking glial cells. Now I'm really interested.
They do it all. They're involved in everything from maintaining the blood-brain barrier to regulating how neurons communicate.
Hold on, the blood-brain barrier, what's that?
Think of it like a nightclub bouncer for your brain. It carefully controls what substances can enter, keeping it safe from harmful stuff.
So they're like the brain security team.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive. And here's another fascinating fact. Astrocytes can actually talk to neurons, influencing their activity and even helping to form new connections between them.
Wow, so it's like a whole conversation happening in there.
It really is.
This is all so fascinating.
It is.
But before we get totally lost in the world of neurons and glial cells, let's talk about something we all experience every day: reflexes.
Reflexes, those rapid-fire automatic reactions that protect us from harm.
Exactly. But how do they actually work? It just seems like our bodies react without us even thinking about it.
Well, it's because reflexes bypass the conscious part of your brain.
Really?
Yeah. They operate on a super fast track. It's like autopilot for survival.
So it's like the nervous system has this secret shortcut for emergencies.
Exactly. And that shortcut is called a reflex arc. It's basically a 5-step relay race that happens in the blink of an eye.
5 steps. That's it.
That's all it takes. Let's go back to that hot stove example, but hopefully you won't have to experience it again.
Okay, I can imagine. Ouch.
First, a receptor in your skin detects the heat. Then a signal races along a sensory neuron.
Like an alarm going off sending a message.
Exactly, and that signal speeds to the spinal cord, the central relay point.
Got it. So the signal reaches the spinal cord, but does it go all the way to the brain?
Not in a reflex. Speed is key here. The signal immediately passes to a motor neuron.
And the motor neuron goes where?
Straight to the muscle in your arm, the effector organ. That muscle contracts and you pull your hand away.
All of that happens in a fraction of a second.
That's the beauty of reflexes. You react before your conscious mind even knows what's going on.
That's incredible. I had no idea they were so complex and vital for our survival.
They are. They're just one example of the amazing capabilities of the nervous system.
This is already so much to process. I had no idea there was so much more to the nervous system than I ever imagined.
I've only just begun.
I know. This has been an incredible start to our deep dive into the nervous system. We've explored how it keeps us going, met the amazing neurons and glial cells, and even experienced the speed of our reflexes.
It's truly a marvel of biological engineering.
Before we move on to part 2, take a moment to think about this. What everyday activities rely on your nervous system? From breathing to making decisions, your nervous system is constantly at work, shaping your experiences and allowing you to interact with the world. Join us for part 2, where we delve even deeper into this amazing system. Welcome back to our deep dive into the nervous system. I was thinking about reflexes some more. We were talking about that 5-step relay race, the reflex arc. That helps us react quickly to things like touching a hot stove.
Right.
But are all reflexes that straightforward?
That's a great question. While the hot stove example shows the basic idea, there's a lot more to how reflexes work.
Oh, I figured there had to be.
So for starters, not all reflexes are created equal.
Oh, okay.
Some are simple, like that withdrawal reflex we talked about, involving just a few neurons and a single synapse.
Okay.
But others are much more complex.
Oh, really?
Yeah, involving multiple synapses and even connections to the brain.
So it's not always a direct line from stimulus to response.
Not always. There can be other players involved.
Okay.
Think about maintaining your balance, for example.
Okay.
That involves a constant stream of information from your inner ear, your eyes, and your muscles, all being processed by your brain and spinal cord.
Wow, that's a lot of multitasking.
It is. To adjust your posture and keep you upright.
No wonder I trip over my own feet
I
sometimes.
think we all do.
So even reflexes that seem simple can involve these complex feedback loops and adjustments.
Exactly.
Like breathing, for example.
Yeah. It's mostly automatic, controlled by the brainstem.
Okay.
But your nervous system is constantly monitoring your blood oxygen levels and adjusting your breathing rate accordingly without you even realizing it.
It's amazing how much our nervous system does behind the scenes.
It really is. A lot of unsung heroes in there.
Yeah, definitely unsung. But I'm also thinking about things like emotions and how we react to stress.
Okay.
Are those related to reflexes too?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
While we don't typically think of emotions as reflexes, there are definitely some similarities.
Okay.
When you're suddenly startled, your body goes into fight or flight mode.
Right.
Your heart rate speeds up, you breathe faster, your pupils widen, your muscles tense up, all thanks to the sympathetic nervous system.
So it's like we're hardwired to react to threats before we even have time to think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like having this ancient survival system built right in.
That's fascinating. What about the opposite of that? That feeling of calm and relaxation?
Oh, yeah.
Is there a different part of the nervous system in charge of that?
You got it. That's the parasympathetic nervous system.
Okay.
It helps to calm things down, slowing your heart rate, aiding digestion, conserving energy.
So our nervous system is like a constant balancing act between these two branches.
Precisely. They work together to regulate your body's functions, keeping everything in a state of dynamic equilibrium.
This is making me realize just how much we haven't covered yet.
I know, right?
We've been focusing on these broader functions of the nervous system. But the brain itself deserves its own deep dive.
Oh, for sure. It's the most complex organ in the human body.
Absolutely. So where do we even begin with the brain? It
Yeah.
seems like there's so much to talk about.
Well, let's start with the basics. The structure.
Okay.
The brain can be divided into three main parts:
Oh.
the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem.
Okay. Three main parts. Cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem. Got it. But what does each part actually do?
The cerebrum is the largest part of your brain.
Okay.
It's responsible for those higher level functions that make us human: thinking, learning, memory, language, consciousness.
Oh, wow.
And it's also divided into two hemispheres, left and right, each controlling the opposite side of the body.
So the cerebrum is like the command center making all the executive decisions.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
Then you have the cerebellum, tucked under the cerebrum at the back of your head.
Uh-huh.
It's the master of coordination and balance,
Okay.
making sure your movements are smooth and precise.
Ah, so that's why I can walk and talk at the same time without falling over.
Exactly. The cerebellum's constantly getting information from your senses and muscles, making tiny adjustments to keep you balanced and coordinated.
Okay, so we have the cerebrum, the big boss, and the cerebellum, the master of movement. What about the brainstem? What's its role?
The brainstem is like the unsung hero, often overlooked, but absolutely essential for life. It connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls all those vital functions we don't even think about: breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, swallowing,
Wow.
even your sleep-wake cycles.
So the brainstem is like the lifeline of the brain, making sure everything keeps running smoothly.
Exactly. It's constantly monitoring your internal environment and making adjustments to keep things in balance.
It's incredible how all these different parts work together so seamlessly.
It really is a remarkable system.
But I'm curious about how the brain itself is organized.
Oh,
Is it just this random jumble of neurons, or is there some kind of structure to it?
There's definitely structure. The brain is made up of different regions, each specialized for particular functions.
Okay.
For example, the frontal lobe at the front of your brain is responsible for planning, decision-making, personality.
So that's the control center for our higher level thinking and behavior.
Exactly. Then you have the parietal lobe,
Okay.
which processes sensory information from touch, taste, temperature.
So that's how we know when something is hot or cold, or when we're feeling a hug.
Precisely. And then there's the temporal lobe on the sides of the brain, involved in hearing, language comprehension, memory.
So the temporal lobe is where we process all those sounds and words we hear.
That's right. And finally, the occipital lobe at the back of the brain.
Okay.
It's dedicated to vision, processing information from our eyes.
Like a complex puzzle, with each piece of the brain fitting together to create this big picture of who we are and how we experience the world.
That's a great analogy. And it's important to remember that all these different regions don't work in isolation. They're constantly communicating with each other,
Right.
sending signals back and forth through this vast network of interconnected neurons.
It's mind-boggling to think about all the activity happening in our brains every second.
It really is, and it doesn't stop.
But what about how the brain changes over time?
Yeah.
We know our brains develop as we grow from childhood to adulthood.
Right.
But what happens after that? Do our brains just stay the same?
That's a great question. And thankfully, the answer is no.
Okay, good.
Our brains are incredibly adaptable, even in adulthood. This ability to change and rewire itself is called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. So our brains can still learn and grow?
Absolutely. Every time you learn something new, form a new memory, have a new experience, you're actually changing the physical structure of your brain.
So our brains are constantly being molded and shaped by our experiences.
That's right. Neuroplasticity is this powerful force that allows us to adapt to new situations, overcome challenges, even recover from brain injuries.
That's incredibly encouraging. It means that even as we age, our brains can keep up with us.
Exactly. And there are things we can do to promote neuroplasticity,
Oh, like what?
like challenging ourselves with new activities, learning new skills, staying physically and mentally active.
So it's like a use it or lose it principle for the brain.
In a way, yes. The more we challenge our brains, the more adaptable and resilient they become.
This is all so fascinating. I'm starting to see the brain in a whole new light. Not as a static organ, but as this dynamic, ever-evolving network that shapes who we are.
That's exactly what it is.
I think this is a great place to pause for now.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground today. It's good to let it all sink in.
We've journeyed from reflexes and the structure of the nervous system all the way to the different regions of the brain and this amazing concept of neuroplasticity.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah, it is. And in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how this remarkable ability of the brain to adapt plays a role in healing, stress management, and even shaping our thoughts and behaviors.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it all ties together.
I can't wait to unpack all of that. Join us for the final part of our deep dive into the nervous system, where we'll continue to unravel the mysteries of this incredible organ. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on quite a journey exploring the nervous system, from those lightning-fast reflexes that protect us to the complex workings of the brain.
I know, right?
And in this final part, we're going to delve even deeper into that concept we touched on earlier, neuroplasticity,
Okay.
the brain's ability to change and adapt throughout our lives.
It really is remarkable.
Yeah, it's like a superpower.
Yeah.
So Dr. Eldeeb's handout mentioned that glial cells help the brain repair after injuries,
Right.
like strokes. Is that part of this whole neuroplasticity thing?
Absolutely. Remember, glial cells are the unsung heroes of the nervous system. They're vital for supporting and maintaining those superstar neurons.
Right.
And when there's an injury, certain types of glial cells, like astrocytes and microglia, really kick into gear.
So they're like the brain's first responders,
Yeah.
rushing to the scene.
Exactly. Microglia, those tiny Pac-Men we talked about, they clear away debris and damaged cells.
Oh, right.
And meanwhile, astrocytes form a protective barrier around the injury, and they release growth factors that promote healing and repair.
So it's this coordinated effort to contain the damage and help rebuild what's been lost.
Exactly. And while the brain may not fully regenerate like some other organs, neuroplasticity allows it to rewire itself, forming new connections and pathways to compensate for those damaged areas.
So the brain can find workarounds even after serious injuries. That's incredible.
It is pretty amazing.
But I'm also thinking about the everyday wear and tear of life. Stress, lack of sleep,
Right.
all those things that take a toll. Does neuroplasticity play a role there too?
It's a crucial factor in how our brains cope with stress.
Okay.
When we're stressed, our brains release hormones like cortisol,
Mm-hmm.
which can actually have a negative impact on neurons.
Really?
Yeah, even leading to cell death in some cases.
So chronic stress is like a constant attack on the brain.
You could say that. But the good news is that neuroplasticity can help mitigate some of that damage.
Okay, good.
When we engage in stress-reducing activities like exercise, meditation, or even just spending time in nature, we can actually promote the growth of new neurons
Wow.
and strengthen the connections between existing ones.
Wow. So it's like giving our brains a well-deserved break and a chance to repair themselves.
Exactly. And sleep is another critical piece of the puzzle.
Right.
During sleep, our brains consolidate memories, clear out toxins, and strengthen those all-important synaptic connections.
So it's not just about resting our bodies. It's about giving our brains time to recharge and do some essential housekeeping.
Precisely. Getting enough sleep is crucial for maintaining cognitive function, emotional stability, overall well-being.
Okay. It's kind of unsettling to know that our brains are constantly changing, even without us realizing it.
Yeah.
It's almost like we're not fully in control of our own minds.
It's a profound thought, isn't it? Our brains are constantly adapting to our experiences, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways we might not even be aware of.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think there's also a sense of empowerment in knowing we can influence this process.
Oh,
By making conscious choices about our experiences, the environments we're in, even the information we expose ourselves to, we can actively shape the direction of our brain's development.
so it's not about being passive passengers in our own minds, but active participants in shaping our own brains.
Exactly. Neuroplasticity gives us the power to take charge of our mental and emotional well-being, to cultivate positive habits, and to keep learning and growing throughout our lives.
That's an incredibly hopeful way to look at it. It's like we have this amazing potential within our brains, just waiting to be unlocked.
The journey of understanding the nervous system is ongoing. Each new discovery opens up more avenues for exploration and wonder.
I think it's safe to say that our deep dive into the nervous system has been a resounding success.
Absolutely.
We've learned about those intricate communication networks that let us experience the world, the lightning-fast reflexes that keep us safe, the surprising roles of glial cells, and that incredible adaptability of the brain.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to discover about this complex and fascinating system that underpins our every thought, feeling, and action.
Absolutely. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep marveling at the wonders of your nervous system. It's a journey that never truly ends, and there's always something new to discover.
I agree.
Until next time, keep those neurons firing and those synapses connecting.